Hello everyone, it's really a pleasure being present in this meeting, and I would like to thank you and thanks the organizers for providing me with the opportunity to present the way we're trying to foster the implication of stakeholders during the preparedness phase of a post-accidental situation management. In France, the preparedness of the management of a post-accidental situation is a long-lasting story, starting in 2005, the year of the creation of the CODIRPA, the steering committee in charge of proposing a global strategy for post-accidental management. The French Nuclear Safety Authority is the chair of this committee. As soon as the beginning of the CODIRPA, a pluralistic nature of the steering committee was assumed, with technical and scientific experts, representative from State Department, from nuclear operator, and from local authorities, but also representative of the civil society, the so-called stakeholders from various origins, including members of non-governmental organizations and members of local information committees. At the beginning of the CODIRPA, the stakeholders mainly participated to the various working groups on different topics, such as medical and psychological support to the population, exposure reduction, relocation, and so on. This work led to the publication in 2012 of the first policy element about the post-accidental management in the event of a nuclear accident. However, rapidly it appeared that it was essential to foster the implication of the stakeholders in accordance with the principle of inclusiveness to be taken into account during the management of a post-accidental situation. For that purpose, a working group was created with the aim of proposing paths to promote the implication of stakeholders in the work of CODIRPA. The so-called Stakeholder Implication Working Group was mainly composed of civil representatives and made several proposals. The first proposal was the creation of a website to help the population and potentially local facilitators such as mayor, healthcare professionals, teachers, to be prepared to a nuclear accident. This website, the address is here, include numerous information and education documents. The second proposal was to create a practical guide to the population living on a contaminated territory. This is a very simple document answering 28 questions on the daily life and giving good practices about radiation protection. This guide was inspired by some Japanese guide issued after the Fukushima accident. And the third proposal, which is the one I'm going to talk today, was the creation of another guide dedicated to healthcare professionals. The wish was to create this guide with a strong implication of people living in the vicinity of a nuclear plant. The healthcare professional working group was then created to work on that topic. The aim was clearly to provide answers to the potentially most frequently asked questions by patients to their doctors, or the question of healthcare professionals themselves. For that purpose, two groups were created. The first group, named the local group, gathering physicians, family doctors, pharmacists, hospital practitioners, nurses, veterinary doctors, are all living in the vicinity of a nuclear power plant. This group was in charge of generating the question. And the second group, named the expert group, gathering experts in radiation protection, in medical care, in post-accident management, and some civil representatives, was in charge to responding to these questions. So the working method was as follows. The local group here generated 201 questions plus 2 supplemental questions that came later on. These questions were divided in 6 categories. These categories covered all aspects of health, daily life, professional life, environment, plus two specific categories, a general category here, covering mainly some knowledge about radiation protection, and an emergency phase category describing the course of a nuclear accident and the associated protective measures. During that work, the local group was interested by getting some fact sheets, 25, in order to go deeper in some specific subjects, such as thyroid pathologies or the use of stable iodine tablets. All the questions and the subject of the fact sheets were then sent to the expert group, which was in charge to provide written answers, eventually calling for the help of external experts. Once the answers were completed, the whole document was sent back to the local group for reviewing, keeping in mind two questions. Is this document easily understandable, and is this document useful for my practice in the event of a nuclear accident? And the last step is the creation of a synthetic document taking into account the remarks of the local group, and this document will be published probably in 2021. In fact, the document is currently under review by the local group, and the meeting for finishing the document and preparing the synthesis is scheduled by the end of this year or at the beginning of next year. So it will be published on the website Post-Accident Nuclear with a search engine to facilitate the search for specific information. Even if this process is not finished, in fact it was very long, several years, but it is already considered as very useful and fruitful, since the document in the present state is considered by the stakeholders as clear, comprehensive, and adapted to the need of professional health care. This document is also considered as a potentially useful nuclear accident preparedness tool, and especially for communication. As a result, there was a demand from the authorities and from the plenary CODIRPA to foster the implication of stakeholders in all new working groups, and a general method was then proposed by the stakeholder implication group, which is depicted here. So the first step is to set up a technical working group gathering scientific and technical experts, governmental department, nuclear operators, and some stakeholders. This group is in charge of preparing some technical proposals on a specific topic. These proposals will be presented to a citizen panel. This is what we call the local working group, with two main questions to be answered. Are the technical proposals understandable, and are they acceptable by the population? So the principle of this local working group is to gather citizens living in the vicinity of a nuclear plant with some local authorities, and also some members from the local information committee, the latter serving also as helpers in the process. Thereafter, the member of the local information committee participating in the local working group will have to prepare a synthesis and to gather all the comments and proposals from the local working group. Then this proposal will be presented to the whole group, the whole working group, composed of both the technical working group and a representative from the local working group. And this whole group will be in charge to prepare a synthesis and the final report with proposals, which will be submitted to the plenary CODIRPA. So this method of working is going to be applied to the local foodstuff consumption group. This group is dedicated to the setting up of protective measure against internal contamination through ingestion of locally produced contaminated foodstuff. In fact, in post-accidental situation, this represents the main pathway of contamination of the population. Thus, a central protective measure is to recommend to restrict the consumption of locally produced foodstuff in an area defined by estimates of internal radiation exposure, which represents the technical criteria. However, to be efficient, such a protective measure should be well understood and well accepted by the local population, especially if there is a high rate of self-sufficiency lifestyle in the affected area. In this case, there is a strong need for consulting the population in order to evaluate the understanding and the acceptability of this protective measure and the associated technical criteria. For that, 4 citizen panels of approximately 20 people will be recruited with the help of the local information committees, each panel in a different region of France, thus covering different climates, local agricultural activities and food habits. On the map, you can see that there is one power plant in the north of France, on the north shore of France, another one in the center of France in the Loire Bassin, a third one in the southwest of France, and a fourth one in the southeast of France. So face-to-face meeting will be set up with an acculturation phase during this phase meeting. This acculturation phase is needed to rise up the level of knowledge of the panel about the post-accidental situation, and this will be made with a contextualization to the local country. Then the technical option will be presented and discussed. Thereafter, a synthesis of discussion will be made by the representative of the local information committee to be presented to the whole working group. So the preparation of this panel is currently in course, but was delayed due to the COVID crisis. However, we have got some numerous conversations with a representative of the local information committees and in charge of this panel. And it appears through these conversations that this panel consultation is very well received, but needs to fulfill some key points listed here. The key points are, first of all, face-to-face meetings that are essential to ensure open-minded discussion and to take into account the opinion of each of the members of the panel. The second key point is the diversity of the panels, which is essential to obtain a good picture of the diversity of the population and food habits. The third one is about the synthesis, which must be approved by all members of the panel, ensuring that their opinion is clearly taken into account. The fourth point is that the report to the whole working group is made by a representative of the local information committee. This is essential to ensure that the opinion of the panel is taken into account, as is essential the fact that this opinion appears in the final report. So we ask that the representative from the local information committee participate to the drafting of the final report. And last, we will make a return to the panel in order to show that all their opinion has been taken into account. So thereafter, if this method appears successful, this will be applied to all other subjects to be treated by the CODIRPA, waste management, citizen measurement, and so on. So, the stakeholder implication working group will continue to work with 2 new questions, which are how to promote a safety culture among population in the vicinity of nuclear plants at the preparedness phase. And the second one is how to associate local stakeholders in the management of a real post-accidental situation. This is the end. So thank you again for looking at this short video. And if you need some more discussion, questions, and so on, please feel free to contact us at the indicated email address. Thank you again and enjoy your meeting.